Three.
Yes, tonight we wanted to highlight a communication initiative that we're undertaking to attempt to influence the positive direction of our assessed valuations. And we've got a contract with Whitehurst and Mosier, and John Whitehurst tonight is here to talk a little bit about our communication strategy and where we're going to go. John?
Thanks, Dr. Harder. It's great to be here. School board members and staff and community. It's just an honor to help the district with this project. It was great to work on the bond campaign and the parcel tax, as well as the successful effort to raise our debt limit to meet our bond obligations. And now we're faced with yet another important issue, one that extends, well beyond just a bond program, but more about, what happens to the schools and our communities. The issue we're going to talk about, not a lot of people are talking about. And that's one of the things we want to do, is get a conversation going about the issue of assessed values. Assessed values is an important issue. We're going to go into that. This is going to be a very brief presentation because we're just at the beginning of this. We're just at the beginning of this journey that could take a while. And so I'm going to give you a brief overview, and we'll get into it. Want to just start with the next slide? So briefly, the issue is about the assessed values of the properties and how that relates to our bonds and how it relates to funding overall. Proposition 13 provided that property is assessed at the original sales price and can have an annual adjustment at a rate not to exceed 2%. That has been the law since 1978. In 1978, there was an amendment to 13, Proposition 8, which allowed temporary reductions if the property suffered a decline in value. If the property received the decline in value, it has to be reassessed. So what does this mean? What does this mean to us? Next slide. What it means is, for the statewide situation, as we went into a recession, that there's a huge loss of revenue, and it has forced cutbacks statewide to schools. And a lot of programs, teachers were having challenges, programs, and also in cities and counties, everything was being threatened. Here, for our community, in our schools, what the reduced assessed values did is limit what our bond program could be. Now, the voters have made clear what they want, and the community has made clear what they want. But what we needed first was to get our debt limit up, and now we need to get the assessed values on track and to make sure that what's legally required is being done. Let me show you what I mean. The next slide is, if you take a look at what happened during the recession in Contra Costa County, the assessed values declined by 11%. In our district, from 09, so the recession hit at the end of 08. If you start at 09 values through last year, nearly 19% of the assessed values went down. Do the next slide, Bruce. Now, while it's gone down, the assessed value has gone down, now housing values are going up. And so what we need to do is make sure that the proper assessments are given so that the overall assessed evaluation of the community goes up. Contra Costa County lags far behind other counties in terms of the assessed values. So let's go to the, and just so folks can see that, in Richmond alone, the assessed values for homes this last year, just in a year, is up 26%. So that'll give you one just indicator. You can look at the other ones. I mean, from June 2012 to February 2013, median home values $297 up to $345. So things are coming back. But what's not coming back at the same rate or even close to it as the assessed values. And that's what we need to have a community conversation about, because it directly affects us. Go to the next slide, please. So you take a look here in 2012 as the assessed values in all the other counties around here have gone up, Alameda 2%, and Santa Clara 3.25, et cetera. Contra Costa County only went up less than 1%. And so we need to get the facts. Why is that? What's going on with that? Because this directly affects our program. Go to the next slide. This Prop 13 reassessment is really about fairness for all. Why should some folks carry the burden of our bond program at a certain level, while others are not carrying the burden at a lower level because the assessment's not there? Why are some counties and communities getting a higher assessed value when our communities are not? These are questions that we need to discuss and to get the answers. We don't have the answers tonight. We're just posing these questions because this is really about fairness for all. Take a look at what's happened during the recession. In Contra Costa County, 185,000 properties received a reduction in their assessed values. That's 46% of all the properties. Only 2,837 properties' values were fully restored to the Prop 13 level that they had been assessed at before. So we need to think about that. Out of 185,000 properties, only 2,800 have been restored. Again, questions we needed to have answers to, discussions we need to have. So other counties have started to make news about this. Actually, you can take a look at two counties right there. The assessor of Santa Clara County says that 128,000 properties in Santa Clara County, which is not that much bigger than our county, will receive an increase of assessed value this year. In Los Angeles County, the projection of increase will be 4.3 for this year. So the question is, what will Contra Costa County do? How will they do it? When? What's the criteria? What's the plan? So what we're here to work with the district on is to gather the facts, to inform our entire school family, and to have a conversation. Staff, teachers, administrators, school board, parents, community members. What is this thing about? What can it do to us? And what are we going to do about it? And then engage the larger community, because it's not just about the school board and the schools, right? It's about the cities. It's about the fire districts. It's about everything, because everybody depends on some level on the assessed value of the community. So it's a big question. And then we need to communicate once we've had a community conversation about what the community feels. And so that's going to be an evolving process. And on the last slide is what we all can do right now is next week we're going to have a meeting with the assessor right here. And everybody should come and participate, and let's start the conversation. Let's see what the facts are, and let's see what the process is. And that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Whitehurst. Let me see if there's any public speakers.
There's no public comment.
Thank you. Mr. Ramsey.
Thank you. That was a good primer. And I think it's important today. The West County Times had an article, and I got approached by KPIX Channel 5, and they did a story already. It was on, so please look at the video clip on Channel 5 at 5 and 6. So if you, Ann Notarangelo did a story on the issue and actually talked to Gus Kramer, and he now is aware that this issue is being examined and reviewed. He's aware that he's being questioned. He's aware that he's going to have to justify his numbers. And I think the more information that we're able to gather, I think it will be very useful, especially for our school district, because I was on the board when we took this hit and saw the huge impacts that it did, that if we didn't respond and pass multiple bond measures, a lot of the initiatives that we have undertake to repair our schools, to make our schools safe, to make sure that we have the technological advances that we want for kids,
we couldn't do it. But more importantly, I think that it's important that elected officials understand how important these positions that seem so arcane are. And I'm sure that's the first time Gus Kramer ever had a microphone stuck in his face asking about why is West Contra Costa now questioning what you're doing. It's because of the things that have been stated here tonight. And I do have a couple of questions that I wanted to ask Mr. Whitehurst to make sure that they get addressed. Is one, can you find out if there is an association of county assessors?
Yes, I will.
And find out when they meet, where they meet, and what is on their agendas and what they talk about. Two, is an oversight board at all for county assessors? Like we have a state superintendent of public construction.
Yeah, that's right.
There's a state treasurer. Who's in charge of the assessors? Is it the controller, or is it John Chang? I don't know. But I want to make sure that the state is aware, because the state is impacted by a loss of counties deploying revenue, because each county that loses money that the state receives that then goes back and flows our employees and our programs. And so I want to make sure that we're aware of it, because I think, and then the other issue is I want to know what school districts actually, high-performing school districts like Piedmont Unified, what are their assessed valuation per student? We're like $24 billion, but we have 30,000 kids. Are they $8 billion for their 2,000 kids? I think we need to have some comparison. What's Palo Alto Unified? What are the basic aid districts? I found out today Gus Kramer was wrong. He told everybody there was no basic aid in the district. Akalani's Unified is a basic aid district. So it's already being clear to me that he's never ever been questioned about his job and his performance. And I need to also then find out, does he find out from you, does he make presentations to the County Board of Supervisors, who are his bosses? And if they do, when? How often does he report to them? Does he provide them a status update? Because no one has received a single document except a flyer saying, guess what? I'm going to keep your property taxes low. And that's not fair to all of the individuals who are complying with Prop 13, because then it becomes an extra burden and actually raises taxes on those individuals who are already paying under the Prop 13 guidelines. And those who got a temporary reprieve are staying there and saying, no, your taxes never should have been reduced except for Proposition 8, which is a temporary measure to allow you to be able to stay in your home and not pay property taxes. And then the final thing I want to ask as a question is, what criteria or process did he use to assess and give Prop 8 reductions for 188,000 properties? How many requests did he actually physically, because he has to keep numbers on, how many requests did he actually physically get asked for him reduction? There's no way 188,000 people called his office asking for a reduction. That's not humanly possible. So what kind of process did he use when he only got 5,000 phone calls countywide? This needs to be examined. This needs to be investigated. And if there is conduct that goes beyond the scope of responsibility, then someone needs to be able to go to his boss and say that this is irresponsible, because it's not just, because I started thinking about this, it's not just about what we're trying to do over the next 6 months for 2014, but it's also about the fact, did he properly assess for the previous years and do a disservice to this community? And would the court say, look, you have to reinstate and expand the number? I don't know, maybe there's a statute of limitations issue. You can't go back and revisit. Dr. Harder, that's something I'd like legal counsel to be able to look at, because I don't know how far back you can go. But if this is just a dereliction of duty I'm willing to call, because I always tell Ms. Cronenberg, it's always institutional, it's never individual.
Yes, you do.
It's the institution that has to govern, not Gus Kramer. He won't be there forever, but the Contra Costa County Assessors will. So, for me, I hope every board member takes a serious interest in this, because it's more than just the LCFF. You have to be able to have your revenue limit really reflect it based on your property values, so that you can then receive the true value for programs and other support services. And I think what needs to be captured is, if we have more firefighters, that means if we have a fire in our neighborhoods or the schools, our kids can be safe. Those reductions hurt firefighters. If our police aren't able to get proper assessments, it puts a strain on the police departments in having them be able to keep our schools in our meetings organized and orderly, in our streets safe, in our kids in school and not truant. Remember, we're talking truancy if our kids are out of class and if they can run rampant because there's no one who can go out and retrieve them, then we're going to have problems. So it affects us in that way. And then if it talks about preschool programs or after-school programs or park and rec activities for cities or library and literacy programs for even adults, that impacts our kids and students. So it's important and critical. And the final piece is, recall, and I see the principal of Lake School here, Ms. Surgers, the city kept our school open for 3 years. That was the city of San Pablo. And the city of Richmond still keeps schools open for us to this very day. And so if they're not getting the assessments that they need, how can they continue to help and support and partner with us? So I really think we're onto something here. I hope that other entities in our community, like you said, because I'm not going to worry about Mount Diablo or John Sweat or Pittsburgh. That's up to them. And hopefully they'll join the chorus. But I want us to go to the Kensington Police Protection and Community Service Districts. I want to go to the fire districts. I want to go to the city councils. And I want to go to Gus and say, we're going to hold you accountable and we're going to make sure you give us all a fair deal. Because I like what you stated there, Mr. Whitehurst. And I think that should be the theme of the message. I'm not into gimmicks, but I think fairness to all. Because it's not fair to me, because my property hasn't gotten a private reduction. I'm sure your property hasn't gotten one. You haven't gotten one. And so it's about fairness for all. And if everybody does their fair share, we can then be a village. Because I want to be a village, but I don't want to be taken advantage of. So it is an initiative, Dr. Harder and Ms. Gamba, about fairness for all. And so I welcome this, and I want to find out, lastly, question from you, what are our next steps after Gus Kramer comes on the 19th?
Well, I think obviously that is the most important next step, because we need to hear what he has to say. We then need to take that information, and I believe we need to start to meet with a lot of our key stakeholders in our school family that won't be able to attend next week and get their reaction. Put the facts out, ask people what they think, get their reaction. I think we then need to meet with a lot of opinion leaders throughout the district and get their reaction. And let's see where the conversation goes. We all know how to organize, as we did as a community, to deal with the debt. We saw how a community rallied behind this school board and the school district to do what was right. And I think that we will be able to communicate and organize in a similar manner.
One last thing, and please look, if they have a video clip from tonight, because I think you need to get a copy of it, because Gus Kramer stated on there that he believed countywide it would be a 7% increase. He said that on TV. So I want to make sure that it's recognized. And that would be huge. That was because our bond program is centered around a 4% growth. But it's not just that. We have to recover, so some of the other, but on Channel 5, he said out of his own mouth that he believed it would be 7%. And thank you.
Anybody else? Mr. Enos? No? Mr. Groves? No? Mrs. Merriweather? No? So I have something to say, Mr. Whitehurst. First of all, there is a California Assessors Association. It's right here. Okay? And it appears I believe Mr. Chang is the person there's something down here that says that. So anyway, you'll find it, and there's an association. The point I want to make is that the services, what's really happened here is that the two things about being fair. One is that Mr. Kramer's role is to make sure that we all pay our fair share. And that's the first thing. So this is about making sure you're paying your fair share. And Mr. Kramer is the person who determines what that is. The second one is understanding that the consequence of all of us not having the opportunity to pay our share is that all kinds of services are diminished across the board. And I think we really do want to make that point, because the reason that the other communities, the other agencies, the cities are involved. I've been watching the budget presentations in El Cerrito and Richmond lately because everybody's adopting their budget. And within those budgets, they have a discussion of assessed valuation, because the assessed valuation determines how they're going to put their budget together. And what we're doing is something hasn't occurred to them. I mean, it is an unusual thing to be as proactive as we are, but we're doing it because it's sort of on the heels of our proactive efforts with the debt limit waiver. Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing it either, right? But we are. So I think one thing we really want to do as far as letting the community know is connecting it to the fact that their services have been diminished as a consequence of this, and that if we don't reassess, the reassessment doesn't just help us, but it helps all of them across the board, and even people that we're not thinking are going to be helped, because every single one of them has it in their budget, every single one of them. And I think what we need to do is sort of have a list of here are all of the people who are impacted by this, so that the community more broadly can see that, so that anybody who's in fact paying as Mr. Ramsey and I are, a non-lowered price. We have not been lowered. We're paying an additional share for somebody else, and at the same time, we're getting less services. Right, and that's the consequence. And I think that's really something that nobody's thought about, and that's really the purpose of this entire thing, is to make sure that it is fair for everybody, and that there is a fair level of participation in services, and that at least the community knows why their services are being diminished, and that this is a direct reason why. So I'm looking forward to, first of all, to seeing this video clip tonight. Yes, I think it's on the website. And I'm also looking forward to having the conversation with Mr. Kramer next week. I think it will be a productive conversation. And I think what this does is bring up the opportunity for him to be accountable. That's the magic word, transparent and accountable. And this is the real, there hasn't been any reason or venue for him to do that in the past. But there is now, and it'll be next Wednesday night. So we look forward to seeing you. You'll be here on Wednesday night, and we'll be here.
One final thing I had, since there wasn't any other speakers, was that can you find out, because there's some nuance they're trying to state, that if it's a bank, they're under some kind of special protection, and I think that's a misnomer, and I don't see how a bank who, even on a foreclosed property, so it's around foreclosures, can say that that is established at a reassessed price when they didn't sell it to anybody. And so they just took the property back, but they didn't sell it. So I'm trying to find out what is the rationale behind his belief that he can do this. In addition, that whether they have the parameters to speculate, to say, oh, I'm doing this because I'm worried about a future housing bubble, but I could be worried about a spaceship landing here and zapping us all, but it doesn't have any basis in fact. So I think it's critical and important to take his comments that were stated, that bank manipulation in the article in the West County Times. I mean, if he made a statement about what's the basis of that? Who at Wells Fargo or at Bank of America or Chase is manipulated? Who told you that? When did you come to learn that? How did you examine that? Did you have staff to investigate that? All those are key critical issues, because the more I hear coming out of the mouth of Mr. Kramer, the more I'm seeing that these are not really thought out ideas, and that we've been harmed and hurt in a very, very bad way. And so I want to take this opportunity to just make sure that I say that. And the final thing is, it's not about it's not a property tax hike. It's a restoration of what they previously paid. So it's not a hike. They're paying what they were paying when they first purchased the house. They paid Prop 13 taxes on that. They got a temporary reduction. So to get back to where they're supposed to legally be is not a tax hike. That's a restoration of their tax rate. And I want people to be educated and informed that nobody's raising anybody's taxes. But what we're not going to sit here and just stand idly by is to have people get a tax benefit break and continue to get it that's not deserved. So, because then when they sell their house, they walk away with all the profits, and if they got tax reductions for 5 years and they didn't pay their fair share, that's inappropriate. So I really want the board to understand we have a job to do to make sure our kids, and we have to be vigilant, not just about talking in meetings and hanging out and saying, you know, thinking this or coalescing around this. We got real work to do here, and this is meaningful stuff. And once this is done, then CSBA can do a presentation on how boards can be more proactive and protect their kids and protect their school district, and go into Riverside County or go into San Joaquin County or to go to Sacramento County and say, look, this really needs to be addressed, because guess who really gets hurt by this? Black and brown kids. Black and brown students are the ones who are getting hurt by this. Because I can tell you with Larry Stone in Santa Clara County, I can tell you in San Mateo County, those CBOs are meeting every month, those basic aid districts, protecting their resources for their kids. We need to do the same. And if we can start talking all these gimmicks and games all we want, but the reality is our low-income kids and black and brown kids are not being so, if we're not out here making sure that we're advocating for our kids, because they're doing it in Marin County. They're doing it in San Mateo County, and they're doing it in Santa Clara County. So I just want to thank you and say this is an endeavor well worth undertaking. And I'm pleased that we have the opportunity to really bring some awareness and openness to what's really going on in an office nobody even paid attention to 2 years ago.